Warning, the following episode will discuss topics of failed IVF and adoption, which may trigger potential distress. Please watch at your own discretion.
Hello and welcome back to the Dad Space Connects With podcast, the show that takes a deep dive into the trials and tribulations of what it's like to be a dad and brings some of those difficult conversations to the forefront. I'm your host, Sean Barker, and these are my co-hosts, Luke Wilkinson and Lucas Carter. Today, we'll be talking to Derby County Community Trust Participant of the Year, Andy Nichols. What's the laugh about there?
No, sorry. I'm not. That sounds really bad now we're live. I'm not laughing at your Participant of the Year. I'm just... Yeah, sorry. Sorry, I wasn't. It's just it got it in. Like, everyone else is just like, last episode, just David. But Andy, Participant of the Year, because it's been Andy. But
I'm hoping it's not the only thing of note about me for the episode.
Yeah. We'll have to wait and find out, won't we? So before, you obviously know Andy, in terms of the process, he likes a bit of small talk.
Yeah.
So what we're going for today, Lucas?
We are going for, if you was on Mastermind, what would be your specialist topic?
Ooh.
So
I think I'm just laughing. If I ever appeared on Mastermind, that would be the laugh. I said it before when we're doing like little bits in a newspaper that are random, that absolute random stuff. That would be my Mastermind topic. Just
I'm not
random.
sure you can do too well in that.
Oh yeah, I would.
It's very broad.
I love it. I love random stuff like bus sinks in a sinkhole in Outer Mongolia. Like
Also, like random news stories.
Yeah. What date was that? 7th of January 2004. Do you know, it's stuff like I'd be like, bang, because I love that stuff.
It's a complete random.
Completely random.
No sense to it.
No, I love it.
Out,
And
yeah.
Sam hates it at home because I sit there and just go, I've got a great fact or great random story. That would be my Mastermind topic.
Okay. It's an interesting one. Andy?
Intellectual.
Going away a bit from that, Blues Brothers.
Oh.
Okay.
And it's the whole thing around them as well. So there's the outfits they wear, the hats, the ties, the glasses, the music, the films, the first movie. So I haven't brushed up on them at all for this, but the first movie used like the most car crashes in any film ever. And it's just genius, the whole thing about it.
Wow.
So do you know who made the suits and everything then?
No, but if I was going on Mastermind, I'm fairly sure I'd study for it.
That's a great... Is it Mastermind or Mastermind? Or is that just your accent?
I say master.
Okay. Master.
Yeah, it sounds better.
What,
does
master
sound-
than me?
yeah.
Andy just sounds better than me.
I'm just a bit common.
Yeah, so mine, I have got the worst information retention. I'll blame it on heading balls, but before that, it was still terrible. So unless it's answering questions incorrectly, I've struggled to know what to go
You was
for.
into your music one, yeah?
Yeah, but again, so I'm into music, and everyone will think I'd be great at questions and answers and stuff. I'm terrible. I'm so bad. So I don't think I'd be good at anything. I actually couldn't pick anything that would be a specialist subject.
I remember that because I was going to do a small talk around music one time, just to cater to you, but it sounds like it's probably not the
Well, I
way
can
forward.
chat about it, but if you have a specific question, I would just kind of veer away from answering that and just bamboozle with some other stuff that I knew the answer to. So yeah, I can't pick one. Music's probably something I'm most interested in, but if there's a specific artist, genre, time, I would be terrible, I think. So I don't actually think I've got one.
Oh.
See, I've struggled to put my finger on what it is because I don't know. I don't retain information well unless I do it over and over again. It has to stick after I've done it repeatedly. I think the only thing I've done repeatedly is watch Marvel, so that's probably the best I'm going to get on with. So I'm going to accept my nerdiness and say Marvel.
You repeated, so I'm like that. So if I have a month where I listen to things repeatedly, do the research, I'm great for like a 2-week time span, and then it just drifts away. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're similar
Can't
to
hold
me.
the information.
No, I cannot hold information.
I have to make room for something else.
So are you just Blues Brothers specifically, or are you pretty good at retaining information?
I'm pretty good at retaining info. I like a good pub quiz.
Okay.
So yeah, loads of that. And my job is in pensions. So I wouldn't go on with that, although there's probably plenty of material there for it. But
HMRC.
Yeah, not the most entertaining show, but nonetheless you'd win
Talked
it.
about it before. Fair play.
I think the random
That's
stuff
you'd be
as well.
Participant of the Year and Mastermind. Oh, Mastermind champion. That could be on. When he's on for part 2, you can have that as well.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm not bitter at all, Andy.
No.
Sorry. Welcome to the show.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
so that's our small talk. It's simple as that,
done.
isn't it, Lucas?
just
Nice and easy.
After each other for 2 or 3 minutes, and
Then we move on.
then we move on.
Yeah.
At Connected, we provide free perinatal peer support for parents across Derby. We have an absolutely fantastic team of volunteers who do 6 months of training to provide one-to-one and group support to parents across the city. The groups are bump to babies groups and dads groups where parents can come along, meet other parents with their children, share their struggles and successes of parenthood, have a hot drink and a biscuit or two, and generally get looked after. They're not like your stereotypical mum and baby groups where you go to do something with your baby. It's very much a focus on the parents and getting support. We recognise that dads quite often get overlooked during the stages of pregnancy, birth and beyond. So as well as Dad Space that we do with Derby County Community Trust, we're looking to expand the offer for dads in Derby so that they can access more support during that time.
So we've had topics, haven't we? And Andy's our topic today, isn't it?
Andy's our topic, so much like David, Andy's our topic today. So rather than me sit here, spit me facts and telling you this, that and the other, we are going to listen to Andy talk today, which is going to be quite hard for us, but I'm sure we can make it work. But Andy's generally interesting to listen to, so it won't be too difficult.
And David was as well. Just
Of course, David was as well, yeah. So I can't... Oh, God.
I like the backtracking.
Let's
What is
move
going on?
on. Get into it. So, Andy Nichols, participant of the year 2023. I take massive pride in it because Andy came participant of the year through the programme I run, Team Talk, off the badge. But I'm very proud of Andy as a person that runs that project and seen his journey and what he's achieved. And through doing the Dad Space work and starting these groups up, I've learned a lot more about Andy as a parent, and that's probably not something I put enough attention into. So being able to learn about him in that aspect and what he can offer and deliver to a completely different group of men that need different kind of support, I think it's fantastic. So this is why I really want to get Andy on to come talk. So if you didn't know, last year as well, Andy did some fundraising. I'm going to talk about it as well. Did some fundraising. So we walked from each one of our spots. So we started at, where did we start? We started at the office, didn't we? Because that's where Team Talk started. So it started back at the Trust office on Pride Park. Walked to St. Philip's Church in town, St. Peter's Church first in town. Then we walked to St. Philip's Church, and then we walked back to here on a match day. And then some lads stayed over to watch the game afterwards. But I can't remember, how many miles did we cover in the end?
It was over 8.
Over 8 miles, so massive challenge. There's a lot of hills.
Yes.
As we found, I think I shouted back to you one time and you politely told me to go away. But that's what it is. Don't blame you because it was a big hill and I didn't like it either.
Horrible.
But during that, through his fundraising, he raised £1,200 directly, and then what was it, £500 through?
No, it's £1,200 total.
Just £1,200 altogether. Yeah. So he raised £1,200 to help run Team Talk, and we're very thankful for that. So enough of me talking about Andy. Andy, you talk about Andy. You talk to us.
It's your special subject.
It's my special subject, yeah. But no, Andy, talk to us about you. So
I got into Team Talk and then Dad Space because during the pandemic I was struggling with my mental health. I have been doing for a lot of years, and some of it is that journey through parenthood. So I've always had some sort of depression, anxiety without giving my age away. And I always say that without giving my age away, even though it doesn't really matter. For the best part of 30, 40 years, I've had mental health challenges. And they came to the fore about 9-10 years ago, or I did something about it then. And I've done lots about it. So I've had counselling, I've had CBT, and all sorts of different therapy. And all of those are really just short term. So it's like you got 6 sessions. So maximum 12 weeks, really, a couple of weeks in between. And they all helped in the moment, but I needed something else. I needed something that was going to be longer lasting. And I'd looked at kind of mental health groups and then found this one. Came along during the pandemic, and it's made such a difference to my mental health. It still goes up and down and can go really down at times, but because I'm here every week, getting that check-in, talking to people, talking through different situations, seeing what the other lads are going through as well, I think it makes it easier. because even if I'm going down, there's kind of a stop on it, or a let's stop and think, or there's somebody there to talk to. And so I think it's kind of given me a more even keel. And I will always tell people how important it is for blokes to talk. And I think that I hadn't really fully realised that until I came along to Team Talk, because it just made such a difference. I'm seeing such a difference in other people as well. Seeing lads coming in here, their first sessions just kind of on the floor. And then as they get along and start talking to people and get involved in like the most stressful thing in the world, which is Uno. It's
how we play a mental health session is beyond me, but it's a great game.
Who came up with that idea?
Lucas.
No, you was already playing it when I turned up. Not been that.
Lucas, anything questionable, play for Lucas. Yeah.
Lead of the session, Lucas.
Nice.
But I think it just kind of seen such a difference. And one of the things that I've tried to do is to be more open about it, to talk more. It's difficult to talk too much about what's going on because I have to protect my family in that. But the two have kind of intertwined, and family work, everything just kind of amalgamates into what causes the issues. And so kind of things like this, Dad Space as well, I went along because I think I've been pestering Lucas that, well, we need something else. We'd seen what people are doing elsewhere at work. We've got a dad's group that's just made such a difference for people just to kind of talk and say, all right, this is going on, or this is a challenge I'm having. What can I do? And said to Lucas, well, we need more of that, because we come along to Team Talk, and if you do have dads there, it's difficult for them to talk about being a dad. It's easy to talk about being a bloke and the challenges that you have, but being a dad it's kind of different, and some people might not get it if they're not in that situation.
So we talk about kind of dads talking, that you talked about being open and seeing the difference with other people that's maybe opposite you that's talking. How important has it been to socially maybe talk about some of the difficulties you faced and offering maybe that support for the guy opposite you that's having the conversation? How kind of integral to your, I suppose, your difficulties and seeing someone else with difficulties with mental health?
It's massive. I think talking to somebody and them just sitting there and saying, yeah, I get it, or I've done similar, I've been through other things, to hear stories like David's, it just kind of makes it acceptable to talk. And the more you talk, the less you keep inside, and I push things down, but the more you can get out, the less it goes down, and the easier it is to recover from those lows. And talking to other people and just seeing them not get better, but just be better in the moment. We've got one lad that I give a lift home to on a Monday, and he will walk into the group and he will say, I'm a 2 out of 10 this week, lads. By the time he's been here, by the time he goes home, he's always at least a 7. And that's just the difference of being around people who understand and being able to just get it off your chest, or even sometimes seeing that there's somebody in a worse situation than you, or just perceiving that somebody's got it worse than you, because then, well, actually what I'm going through isn't really that bad, and it just puts it in context.
And how much do you see maybe a progression in someone, and probably a progression in yourself? You know, when you say maybe feeling like someone's in a worse position, you know, I'm sure they look at someone else and see that, and maybe others feel that they're in a better position. But in general, you're dealing with your own kind of inner kind of mental difficulties and health that's very much about you. But the fact that you're sharing it and you're seeing those around, do you see a big improvement with everyone? Do you see, is it almost managing some of the problems that you face?
I think so. Yeah, I think it is. There's some weeks that I won't look forward to coming along because of how I'm feeling, but then always go away feeling better, and then looking forward to the next one. And I think that even knowing that when I can step through this door and I don't have to talk to anyone, don't have to say anything to anyone at all, I'll go and grab a cup of tea, I'll sit down and just watch, and that makes me feel better. And I know that if I am starting to feel down, just that check-in is massive on a weekly basis. And the more there is that, the easier it is to just kind of be positive and kind of it's working, because at the moment I'm in a really good place.
Amazing. Well, that's the whole point of the space that you've created, isn't it?
I think credit to Lucas as well, because he took it on board when he came part of his university volunteering hours, and he just wanted to change the whole first hour aspects. It turned into a bit of a zoo atmosphere, which it was a bit too noisy. It was a bit kind of, you walk through the door going, whoa, this is a bit too much. So Lucas then sat with likes of Andy and Les and the other longer serving participants going, what does the first hour should be? And it should be that door open, activities on, and they do what they want for an hour. And I think at that point, when you walk through and you're not feeling great and it's nice and relaxed, it's not silent. There's a bit of an atmosphere going on, and people are in the little things. If anyone walked in, they think it's a clique, but it's just a comfort zone where they want to sit. But then that helps in the second hour when there's a conversation. And that's where, when people walk out being a 7 out of 10, because they've come in low, they've been accepted for being low, and they've walked out feeling quite proud of themselves.
So there's quite a detailed process to that then.
Yeah.
Quite a well thought out, structured process.
Without knowing it. And that's no disrespect to Lucas and the planning, but it is a very robust way of working. And it's a bit like, if things change, if Lucas is off one week and I come in and change it, people go, what's going on here?
Horrible.
And
It's horrible.
all the time just going, Wilco, we'll stop. And I'm going, what is that? Relax. Remember, first hour's steady. Yeah. And you're kind of going from there. So it's kind of, sometimes you're trying to do too much, but little more than everything. I think that's where, Andy, when you talk about your story in a second, you're at that confident stage where it's that trust into it's years, and it's hard to gain trust. But again, I keep saying it, but Lucas there, he's done wonders with not just Andy, others where they trust him. So they are opening up more and then feeling comfortable to dive forward with others. So
I think that's the point where we dive into Andy, I suppose. Yeah. I think we've talked enough about the team talking to about. I think it's important to talk about you before that, and what, not necessarily what drove you towards that, but obviously you've explained why, but the things that have happened in the build-up that can also impact and have a knock-on effect later on in life. So I'll let you take it for where you feel comfortable, really.
Yeah. So my wife and I got married 12 years ago, and I've always had this vision of getting married, having a family. I bought a house when I lived in Leeds with the idea of living by myself in a 4-bedroom house. And the idea was, I'm going to fill it with a family. And that's just what happens. You get married, you find someone, you have a family. And we got married, and there's a few other people at work got married at the same time. We were trying for kids. Every other week, it felt like somebody was having a kid or announcing that they're pregnant. We're going to be going off on maternity leave soon. And we weren't. And we tried and tried and tried, and it wasn't working. So we went and got some help, and we tried IVF. Where we were at the time, there was only one round funded. If we'd lived, so we were living in Leeds. If we lived in Derby, we would have been able to have 3 attempts at it. So there's kind of disparities there. There's kind of lots I could get into on how fair systems are and postcode lottery and things like this, but I won't, because I don't want to bring it down too much. And we tried, and it was the strangest thing in the world to go through, because my wife was put under so much stress. There were so many tests on her, so many procedures she had to go through. And for me, they just checked that everything was all right, and that was it. And everything was all about her. And we went through it, and in the end, we went through kind of the strangest couple of weeks with it, where she had the eggs, or the eggs taken out, everything was put together, and we were told, there's only one viable. It's not, they score it out of 10, it wasn't a great score. And so they said, but we're going to go ahead with that one. And then a few days later, they turned around and said, hang on a minute, we've got another one. It didn't look like it was doing anything. It's now pretty much there. And the whole process was kind of all around hope for us. even beforehand, if my wife missed a period, then it was kind of like, let's test, let's do a pregnancy test, and it was always negative, and they came and I blogged at the time, or I was writing on support groups for IVF, and I don't know why, but we kind of almost named the child then at that point. If it was a girl, it was going to be called Hope. And so I wrote a story at the time calling Reaching for Hope, because it was this kind of roller coaster ride that we had. And I've been surrounded by females my entire life. I've got 2 sisters. All of our animals are female. So it was kind of inevitable that any child I had would be female. And we went through it. They implanted 2, and we then were waiting, and kind of it came to the period of time that we went back and they said, look, no, not pregnant. And prior to that, my wife had spoken about adoption, and it was never, ever something that I wanted to do. And I think that part of that was that it's the idea of raising someone else's child and that child turning around to you at some point and saying, you're not my real dad. And I couldn't get to grips with that at all. That was something that never ever crossed my mind. We went through and we got the kind of the negative result. And then that weekend we'd planned, regardless of what the result was, that we were going to go away for a weekend. So we went away to Bridlington with the dog, and we were just going to take it easy, take some time for ourselves. Over the course of that weekend, there happened to be a documentary on TV about adoption parties. Now, that sounds like, oh, great, adoption parties, balloons. But what it is that you have a load of prospective adopters in a room and a load of kids who are up for adoption in a room. And the idea is that they mix with them so they can see, well, this child we think would be a good fit for us, or we like this child, or we like that one. And the idea is that it just kind of helps those children to get put into those adoption placements. On that program, there were 2 boys, siblings. I think one was 5 or 6 and the other one was 11 or 12. And the local authority were making the decision during this process that they were going to split those 2 boys up, because it was a lot easier to find a home for the younger boy, to find an adoptive home for the younger boy than the older boy. So the older boy was going to stay in foster care, the younger one was going to be adopted. And I just had such a visceral reaction. I was screaming at TV, you cannot do that. That is not fair. That is not right. You cannot split those children up. And it was kind of at that moment that things just clicked, and like, hang on a minute, maybe it is a route for us. And we'd looked at going through IVF again, but as I say, we'd only had 1 shot on the NHS, so we'd have to pay for it. And the route that they were choosing, the procedure they would choose for it, is where they kind of cut things off and stick things together. That was going to open up the possibility of us bringing a child into the world with difficulties. We wouldn't know what they were until the child arrived. And so we thought, well, rather than spending that money on that, we can support a child who has difficulties already, whatever they may be. And so we decided, well, right, okay, we'll go down that route. We approached loads of adoption agencies, and they all turned around and said, and the local authority, and they turned around and said, you have to wait 9 months. You have to wait a year before you can do this. Because you've been through IVF, because you've been through that trauma and loss of that, you have to wait a year. And we didn't want to, because we'd come to terms. This is the route that we wanted to do. And I say we'd come to terms, and what my wife very much had. I think I realised later that I hadn't quite. But we went down that route. 6 months later, we found an adoption agency that was willing to take us on with just a 6-month break. And they were brilliant. We went through the process, which is, it's intense, it's strange. You learn a lot about yourself. You learn a lot about each other. We had to write, the first thing you do is fill in loads of forms that basically covers your entire movements for your entire life. So where have you lived? Where have you worked? Have you been out of the country for extended periods of time? What relationships have you been in? What's your family? Doing DBS checks and things like this. And it's just kind of the strangest thing and quite intrusive. And I was like, well, why is all this relevant? And you get taken through it by a social worker. But the second part of it, the social worker comes and visits you, and you go and do some training as well. So our social worker came in, was spending a bit of time with us, getting to know us and talking a lot about loss, because at the heart of it, adoption is all about loss. It's the loss for the child of that birth family. It's for the loss of the birth family of that child. It's for the loss of those who are adopting, that maybe they haven't been able to have children themselves, or there's something that they feel might be missing in their life. And so you learn a lot about it. And our social worker won't mind me saying this, but every time she came, I cried. And every time I cried, she smiled, because I think she took pleasure in it, because she knew that she was kind of getting to the bottom of things, and we were understanding. And we went along, you have 2 lots of training days. We went along the first one. And we're going through this training day, and there's loads of other potential adopters there. And it got towards the end of the first day, and our social worker said, "Can you hang on a bit afterwards?" Like, okay, what have we done? What's wrong? I said, well, we don't normally do this, but we've got some profiles of children that we would like you to look at, because we think there might be something in there for you. And when we went into the process, I always assumed that I'd be a father to girls. We always looked at adopting more than one child to start off with. Well, not to start off, adopting more than one child, because then you kind of don't have to go back. You can settle your family. They can support each other. And if you've got one child who settles quicker than the other one, they're there for each other. They've kind of got that space that they know already. And profiles they gave us were, there was 2 brothers, there was a profile of two sisters, and there was a profile of a lone child. And we had a bit of a look at it. They talked us through these profiles, and we said, well, can we take it back to our hotel room? It was about a quarter of an hour walk to our hotel, and on the way back, we were trying to quiz each other to find out, well, what did we think? Which profile did we like? And it's horrible kind of choosing between these children, because you know that some of them you might not want for various reasons. And we got back to the hotel, and we're looking through the profiles, and we put them in the corner of the room, or specifically we put the one of the lone boy in the corner of the room. We then were sat on the bed going through these other profiles and thinking about how we might parent these children, how the family might develop, and what that might be like, how we might deal with some of the challenges that they were going to face because of the backgrounds that they'd had, because of the reasons that they'd been adopted. And every now and then, one of us would walk to the corner of the room and look at this profile. And there was just something about him that there's a lot about him that I'm not ready to share, or I don't want to share, because it's his story. But there was just something about him that kind of was like, ooh. And then the next day we turned around to him and said, right, he's the one that, of the 3, he's the one, really sorry about these other ones, but he's the one that we like to go down the route to adopt. And then at the end of the day, they put up all the profiles for all the potential adopters to look at. And every single couple looked at his profile and were like intently looking at his profile, to the extent that I'd already claimed him. He was my son. And at one point, one of the social workers turned around and says, "Andy, step away," because I think I was growling behind these other potential adopters. But from then on, he was ours. And I'm kind of really happy that he is, because he's brought so much to us as a family. He's brought so much to me, and it's been an interesting journey. It's been a challenging journey. It's been a real roller coaster of a journey. He's now 12, so he was 3 when he came to us. He's now 12. I've never ever have to worry about that question of, you're not my real dad, because he knows he's adopted. He's quite happy to talk about that. He knows about his other challenges. He's quite happy to talk about that. And I think that just kind of helps. But yeah, it's been kind of a real up and down journey that we've had. But as I say, I think we're in a good place at the moment.
Yeah, so it's amazing how, excuse me, how the journey's evolved, how your journey's evolved as becoming a father. And it starts off maybe in this ideal way in your mind of what it should look like, what it should feel like. And that was maybe taken away from that possibility. Yeah. And then the fact that you wasn't considering adoption and the process that it's probably you've gone through and as a couple as well, to get to the stage where it might just be the perfect match. It might just be the thing that was supposed to be right. I love the fact that you say that, you almost had an idea that it was going to be a girl and you wanted to, and there was a lot of methodical thinking and detail that goes into the thought of having a child through adoption, compared to maybe two people that want a child and can have one, if they're fortunate tomorrow, in terms of getting pregnant, and the detail that doesn't have to necessarily go into that. But actually, if you go in a different way through adoption, where these kids need someone to bring them up, to raise them. And it's interesting hearing that story in terms of how it's developed for you and how it's developed for your partner and obviously the child. And it's wonderful to see that journey evolve over a certain amount of time for you, probably personally, and how it's helped you, and definitely for the process that it's become to having a very healthy kind of family.
Yeah. And kind of, it's been really interesting, the journey. And then I think 2020 has massively helped me as a father. So when we adopted, we made the decision that my wife would be a stay-at-home mum, purely on the basis that she earned less than me at the time. And I was like, well, we want to do the best for our family. And we spent 6 weeks getting to know him and him being with us. So I had 6 weeks off work where we basically shared the responsibility. We shared being parents. And then I went back to work, and then she was a primary caregiver, to the extent that for 5 or 6 years, and sometimes even now, he was so used to asking mummy questions that when he asked me questions, he'd go, "Mummy," and then realize that it's me, "Daddy." So my name for a long time was Mummy Daddy. It's nice to go back on that. And then I struggled with that, because we went into it as a team. We went into it as a pair, where kind of everything we did was together. And then I was missing out on the time with him because I was at work. And then 2020, pandemic came, and work said, right, everybody go home. You're working from home. And that made such a difference to me as a dad, because all of a sudden I was seeing loads of him. I was popping up between breaks in work. He was popping up on web calls that I was having with people. One in particular that I'll never forget was that there I am having a serious conversation with some colleagues, and all of a sudden they're just laughing. And I thought, well, what's going on? What's funny? And he's behind me with a lightsaber, just waving it around, which is why we then built a shed in the garden for me to go and work in. But having that time meant that I was spending more time as a dad, and we were becoming kind of a more equal partnership. And since then, so I work in the office a couple of days a week. I work from home the rest of the time. We are kind of a pair, a duo in that parenting, and he will come to me and ask for things. If he doesn't get his way, he'll go and ask his mummy. But she will 9 times out of 10 will say, "Yeah, what did your daddy say?" She is there for those times when I'm a little bit too quick to say no, and it's like, well, and I'll say, ask your mummy, because I know in my head that I've said the wrong thing. And then she'll say, oh, well, what about this? And it just kind of gives that out and just makes it a lot easier.
Amazing.
Wow.
I think your journey into that, like you said, I think there's no one way things have to work. And I think we've talked about this before in the podcast about how I see things and like the modern day. I don't think there is one way of doing things. Like you say, the expectation on people nowadays is you get with someone, you get married, you have kids, you move out before that, obviously, but you know, you build this family and that's the way it must be and that's the way it has to be and that's the model. But there is no model. There is no which way to do it. And I think it's really important that people kind of, I think like you say, you hadn't considered adoption as something you wasn't wanting to do. And I find it really not funny, but interesting through your journey where you talk about, I didn't want this, now I did that. I didn't want this, but I did that. And you constantly like almost contradict yourself and go back on yourself a little bit and realise. I think it's really important that people kind of recognise that. And I can imagine there's couples out there that do give up at that stage and don't consider it and then give up on the family and then they live this life where they might have felt like there's a hole and you filled that hole. So I find that interesting in your path. Like, what was it that pushed you towards, was it just that one TV programme that made you sit and go, right, that's it, I'm not giving up on this?
I think it's a very selfish thing we did. I wanted to be a dad. I'd been part of, so two sisters, was part of a family. It's just kind of being part of a family was what I knew. It was what I always expected. I want to be a dad. It wasn't going to happen naturally. It wasn't going to happen through IVF. This was a route that we could take. It was a route that we had enough love, enough compassion, enough as a team to go down it. And one of the most common things you will hear people saying to adopters is, "Oh, it's such a great thing you've done. This is amazing." Or I'm really, really pleased that you've done that. And it's not. As I said earlier, it's about loss. And it's kind of the most selfish thing I've ever done in my life is to take somebody else's child and make them my own. And I think the more people understand that, the easier it becomes, the less stigma there is attached to it as well. Because as I say, it is all about loss, and that loss runs all the way through.
I think with that little point there, so my mum and dad's fostered, and I've got an adopted brother, fostered brothers and sisters. I think the reason people say that is because they recognise the sacrifice that comes with it as well. So there's my brother, older sister, myself, and mum and dad decided to foster. Now they're kind of sacrificing a very comfortable, healthy family to know that they were going to have so many kids come through. They don't know how it's going to affect us, how it's going to affect the family, but they were willing to put their kind of lives and their home and open it up to so many kids. And it's wonderful hearing you sound like a different person to how you started the podcast, the little details that you've given us about yourself to where you are now. And that's based on the fact that something that you always wanted in a selfish way, if you want to say that, in terms of this is what I want, and the way that you've kind of got that life and family that you've talked about, it's just a different route. And we talk about mental health, and we talk about all these things have been so relevant and so prevalent in the dad space stuff, that people have different journeys, they have different difficulties, but different paths are there for you know, all the men that you speak to, all the dads that you speak to, and yours is just a different journey. I suppose before we finish, I just wanted to know what you would say to someone who's maybe considering adoption. If you imagine kind of where you started to where you are now, what would you say to someone to finish this podcast when you talk to someone about adoption and what they should consider?
Expect the unexpected. We planned for worst case scenario in some areas, and what turned out was even worse than that. We've had loads of lovely surprises. And make sure you've got a support network around you. Make sure you've got really strong support. We moved from Leeds to Derby to be close to the family because we didn't have that support network. So the support, the compassion is just really key to I guess, making the family work.
Brilliant. Well, it's It's lovely to see you, and thank you for sharing the story. Sorry,
Unbelievable.
Wilco.
No,
You're on that justice.
No. I'm just in awe. Like I knew Andy and I knew Breathe things, but that's just. I'm not saying it's made me think different of you, but your courage and still you're working on yourself. So I'm sure people listening, and again, like we said with David on the last one, it won't be the first time or the last time you're on the podcast. So thank you so much for opening up. It's much appreciated.
You're welcome.
Thank you for tuning into the Dad Space podcast. Please join us next time. Remember to like and subscribe to the channel, and for any information regarding Dad Space groups where we discuss these kind of topics, please visit the Derby County Community Trust website. See you next time.